Hello and welcome to MEL Make Stuff. My name is Melissa and this is the first episode of 2023. In today's episode, I am going to be telling you about some of the things that I want to make this year. But before we get into that, I just want to briefly reintroduce myself because I know we have a lot of new viewers here, so welcome. As I said, my name is Melissa, or Mel. I'm 37 years old, and I have been knitting for most of my life, so since I was a very small child. So you will see mostly knitting around here, and also a little bit of sewing, crochet, and occasionally some hand sewing or other crafts. I live in central Massachusetts with my husband, our pit bull, and 2 cats. And on this channel, the whole purpose of this channel is mostly for me to just document the things that I'm making and to show you the interesting bits. I'm mainly active here on YouTube and not on Instagram really, or any other sort of social media. I just can't keep up with all of that stuff, so most of what I do and like looking at comments and stuff like that happens here on YouTube. I don't really have a set schedule for when I make and release videos. It's just they come out as I have something interesting to show you. This channel is not my job, I'm not trying to sell you anything, and I don't do anything sponsored. So I'm mainly bringing that up right now because I'm going to be showing you a couple of kits and things like that. And I just want to be clear that I've purchased all of that stuff and I don't do like sponsored stuff with companies or anything like that. So let's get into some of what I want to make in 2023. As it started to get cold here again for this winter, it became obvious to me that there are a couple of holes in my wardrobe that I would sort of like to plug with a couple of knitted items this winter. The first one is I would really like some heavyweight sweaters that are also cute for going out. I have enough sweaters to wear around the house that can sort of get dirty if I'm doing chores or that sort of thing, but I don't have too many that are like cute if I want to, go on a date or whatever. So I would like to make a couple of bulky weight sweaters this winter. The first one that I would like to start is the Enamorado sweater by Valentina Bogdanova. This pattern is knit bottom up and has a lot of interesting twisted stitches and sort of wrapped stitches on the body. And I haven't done a bottom up raglan in a long time, so that is going to be an interesting experience now as an adult. I believe the original pattern calls for one of those yarns that's like a tube that has fiber blown inside of it, and I don't have any of that in my stash. So what I am planning to use is a combination of 2 yarns, which I've had in stash for a little while and never thought of putting together. And as soon as the idea occurred to me, I got super excited. So for this sweater, I am planning to use some Foxhill Farm Romney worsted weight, which I bought last January, I think. And the color of this yarn is just very interesting. It's like a brownish, it's almost a silvery brown. It's definitely more brown than gray, but it's sort of treading the line right in the middle there. And I'm going to be pairing that with a Shibui mohair that I've had in stash for a long time in the colorway Mineral, which is another one of those sort of in-between colors. It's sort of gray, sort of purple. It's a cooler neutral, and so I think that these two together are going to work well for this pattern. Another heavyweight sweater that I'm considering is the Northern Augustins No. 1 by Anne-Sophie Velling. This is a pattern with a top-down colorwork yoke and then the flea pattern all over the body and sleeves. For this sweater, I am planning to use some dark brown natural colored Nutiden that I have. I'm going to hold that double. And then for the contrast color, I would like to use these 2 skeins of DK weight that I have, which I hand dyed many years ago and used in a couple of different projects. As you can maybe tell here, the dye lots for these 2 were different, and so I'm going to have to do a little bit of creative piecing this together, like maybe I'll use one in the yoke and the other for the majority of the body. And because this contrast color is a DK weight yarn, I am going to beef that up a little bit by holding it together with a strand of mohair. This is some hand-dyed mohair that I have, which is by Lichen and Lace, and I only have the 1 skein, so I'm hoping that that will make it all the way through the sweater, and if not, I probably have something else I can use that's like a similar light pink if I need to sort of mix that in here and there, but we'll see as it goes along. The last one I'm considering, which is not a super heavyweight sweater, I think it's worsted weight, is the Easy V by Caitlin Hunter. This pattern has a very interesting wide V neckline, and the original pattern is made with spin cycle. So for my version, I'm planning to use a couple of leftovers that I have of worsted weight yarns that I've used for projects in the past, and a skein of my hand spun. So my version, because I'm planning to use two relatively solid colors in the yoke, I think is going to have a little bit more definition in the color work, and we'll see if I like that or if I need to end up switching some of those out for another skein of my hand spun or something that's a little more modeled to sort of blend the color work through the yoke. I may or may not do the color work on the sleeves for this one. I really like the way it looks, but because my arms are rather short, sometimes if there's a bunch of color work at the wrist, it can really shorten the line in a sort of unpleasant way, so I will assess that when the time comes. Another hole that I identified in my wardrobe is that I would like to have a couple of natural colored shawls. I have a bunch of, hand-dyed superwash shawls, and you all know if you've been here for a little while, I don't really knit shawls all that often, so I don't really have a whole lot to choose from if I want something that's more solid or a little more neutral. So that's something I would also like to do this year. One of the shawls that caught my eye is the Linya shawl. I will spare you my pronunciation of the designer's name, but it will be on the screen. And for this, I would like to use some Isir Alpaca 2 that I have had in my stash. This is just a natural colored wool alpaca blend that I think will show off the lines in this shawl very nicely. And then the other one that I've had my eye on for many years is the Redshift by Jared Flood. This is a triangular shawl that is knit in the round and then steeked, and I am making basically a black and white version. I have some Hillesvåg Vilja in a dark charcoal gray color, and I also have some Bartlett Yarn Sport in Natural Sheep Gray, which is actually sort of a beige. So that's my color scheme for this. I would also like to figure out a way to make it a little bit bigger without it being too deep, like basically longer. So that is going to take a little bit of thinking through. I like I said, I don't knit shawls a whole lot, so I'll have to think through that as far as knitting it in the round and then steeking it, so we'll see how that turns out. Another thing that I would like to do in 2023 is get more into Japanese knitting and crochet patterns. And so this is sort of like a dual approach because I really want to get my crochet skills up. There are a lot of very cool sort of combo knit and crochet patterns, and also just very beautiful crochet and very thin yarns that I would like to explore. And also Irish crochet. I'm diving down a rabbit hole here a little bit. But I have a Japanese pattern book of collars, and it's all collars that are meant to be made and worn with just a normal shirt or dress or t-shirt or whatever, and it's a separate piece that you just sort of wear. And so I am planning to start off with one of the crochet collars in this book, which is the two-way scalloped collar by Yumiko Kawaji. For this, I am planning to use some Quince & Co. Sparrow that I have in my stash. I have used this yarn over the years so many times for garments and have ended up with like random single skeins here and there. And so I was thinking those might be a good option for trying out some of the collars in this book. I would also like to really get into intarsia this year, and I have really admired a lot of intarsia designs over the years. I grew up looking at K facet designs and not having any idea how to even begin with those. And as it turns out, as I've been getting more into Japanese pattern books, there's also a lot of really interesting intarsia patterns in there as well. So that is big goal for me this year. I'm planning to start out with the Scout Shawl by Florence Spurling. This is a really interesting shawl that looks like a patchwork quilt, which is something that's near and dear to my heart. And so I am planning to replicate the color scheme of the original pattern with yarns that I've had in my stash. I have a little assortment here of yarns that I have purchased and also yarns that I've dyed myself. So it'll be good to use up some of these that have been sitting around for a little while and make this beautiful shawl. This shawl is made with a combination of colorwork knitted flat and also intarsia to sort of get over those joins between the patchwork pieces. And so this is going to be where I'm going to start my intarsia journey and then hopefully branch out from there. I would also really like to tackle another bohus sweater this year. One of my favorites since I first started learning about bohus garments is the Blue Shimmer, again by Annalisa Mannheimer Lunn, whose sweater I also made for my first bohus project, which was the red edge. That's it. So for my version of the Blue Shimmer, I am planning to do the yoke pullover version, which is top down. Again, I'm going to be using the Poems of Color book for this. And I pulled all of these colors out of my colorwork stash. So this yoke, I do not anticipate using very much of any of these colors. So I don't think I'm going to actually have to purchase any additional yarn to make this. And this yarn that I'm going to use for the main color for the body is actually yarn that I've had in my stash for an extremely long time. This is some Cascade 220 fingering. So it will feel really good to give this yarn a life as a garment after sitting around for so many years. Another thing I would like to make this year is a scrappy sweater. So I don't tend to have a whole lot of scraps, and it's just the way that I plan my projects, and also I tend to sort of underbuy yarn and play yarn chicken, and so I don't usually end up with a lot of scraps to do scrappy projects at all. But I did get an interesting ball of yarn a couple months ago that I realized I could sort of put together with some of the other things I have to make a scrappy project. And that is this right here, which is called a Mad Ball. I bought this at a local yarn store to me, and the owner makes these out of scraps that she has. She has an entire wall of these things that she puts together, and I just thought that this was a really interesting concept, and I'm sort of a magpie when it comes to sparkly things sometimes, so I saw this and I wanted it, and I didn't know what I was gonna make with it. And so I have that, and I have a couple of mini skeins from like old advent calendars that hadn't been used, and a couple of other smaller scraps that are sort of in a purpley red color palette that might go with this. And I have 3 skeins of Harrisville Designs nightshades that I had bought for a project around the time the yarn came out, and I didn't end up making the project, and it's sort of an odd small amount, like 3 skeins. I can't really make a full-on garment. So I decided I'm going to hold multiple strands together of this group of yarns here and make something similar to the Stay Pull by Park Williams. Something like this. I don't know that I'm actually going to use this pattern, but something that's around, 14 stitches over 10 centimeters, around that gauge, I think I can safely get by holding maybe 3 strands together at a time. So this sweater will be mostly black from the Harrisville yarn, and then it will have sort of pops of pink and purple and orangey red as we move through all of these scraps. And then the last couple of things that I have to show you that I would like to get through this year are some kits. Over the years, here and there, I have saved up for and purchased various kits for sweater projects, and I haven't really gotten through many of them. I feel like I've maybe made one in recent years. And so I have a couple of kits sitting around that I would like to make this year. The first one is a worsted weight colorwork bomber jacket. This is the Vanna Bomber by Kit Couture, which is a Danish company. The main bummer about Kit Couture is that they are not very size inclusive at all, and they do have more of their yarn for sale if you wanted to try to buy, their largest size and size it up, but that's sort of frustrating. So putting that out there as a caveat. But this is a company that writes their patterns and then sells kits to go with the patterns. So that is the situation with this. I was really attracted to both of the colors together, like this sort of odd color combo of bright lemon yellow and like a sort of rosy beige. I'm not sure that either of these are going to look good on me, but I liked them so much that this was the kit I ended up ordering. So it comes with the pattern, the yarn that you need to make whatever size you buy, and also any of the notions. So this one I think closes at the front with snaps, and that will be my first time installing snaps on a knit, I think. So that should be interesting. And the other kit that I have is actually a hand sewing project. This is a kit that I purchased maybe 2 years ago from Alabama Chanin. And for anybody not familiar with Alabama Chanin, just Google it. It is very interesting looking stuff. I was really not into it at first, and then it sort of grew on me over the years. And I have made a couple of this type of garment myself, just without a kit. Basically, the whole concept behind the Alabama Chanin look is that you have 2 layers of knit fabric, like jersey fabric, that are put together. They're stenciled with fabric paint, and then they're embroidered over that paint in some way, and then certain parts of the fabric are cut away. They're highly labor-intensive pieces. This company does sell these pieces. Like you can order a fully hand embroidered piece and it's thousands and thousands of dollars, as it should be. And so that's not in my price range, so I do it myself. Alabama Chanin has also released a bunch of books that explain all about the techniques, the embroidery, how to do the cutting the fabric away, how to stencil, like all of that stuff is available in books that they've put out. And a lot of those I imagine would be available via a local library. So if you wanted to check those out before really getting into this. I will warn you, the planning process is very fun. And then you have like a very long journey with the garment. It's similar to knitting in terms of the length of time that it takes. And it really is a lot of work. I'm looking at a in progress piece that I have over there that needs some alterations. So it's a labor of love. One thing that I do really like about them having released their techniques in all of these books is that if you don't like the patterns that they have on offer, or they're, you don't fit into the size range quite right or whatever, you can easily take these techniques and apply them to whatever sewing pattern that you do like that's made for like a stable knit. It should transfer over to whatever pattern you want to use. So if you don't want to mess around with cutting out the pattern yourself and stenciling and all of that, they do make kits, which are rather pricey. I got mine on a sale. They do like the newsletter sale like most companies do. And so I have this kit for the car coat. I did purchase the kit in this colorway, so it's not bright white, but it's sort of an off-white colorway, and I am planning to do the embroidery as it's shown in this photo. So this garment that they're showing here incorporates a couple of different embroidery styles throughout, and I am gonna have to study that photo a little bit before I get started on my version. So that's a lot. I hope that I can get to all of these things, especially like the different techniques that I want to explore, particularly the intarsia and the crochet. I want to prioritize those because I realized I've been wanting to do intarsia for a long time and haven't really gotten into it. And same with crochet. I do it here and there, but not enough to really be super fluent in the techniques. So we'll see what on this list I get to or don't, and weigh in again at the end of the year. That should be interesting because I usually just go off in completely different directions. You never quite know what's going to happen around here. So that is all that I have for you today, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.